Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn, and I'm thrilled to have with me today Greg Orme. Greg is the author of The Human Edge, which was voted the Business Book of the Year 2020. And we're going to be talking about what it takes to be more creative and curious in this day and age, and how that gives us an advantage over the fields of artificial intelligence that might be coming for our jobs. Greg works with companies around the world, and he also works with the London Business School. Greg, it's wonderful having you here today.
I'm delighted to be with you, Nick. Can't wait.
Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode.
So Greg, for people who don't know about you and your work, could you just give us a brief background as to where you started and your journey to where you are now?
Oh, sure. Well, I started as a journalist on the television with the BBC and ITN and ITV in the UK, being a news producer, producing news programs, and then via an executive MBA at London Business School a very long time ago now, I got into strategy consulting and then more latterly leadership development programs, designing them, delivering them, running sessions on leadership and organizational change. As you mentioned in your kind introduction, I do that directly with clients and also through London Business School with quite a few different global businesses. Along the way, I've written a couple of books on my specialism, which I know is something you're interested in, Nick. So the first book was called The Spark, How to Ignite and Lead Business Creativity. That was back in 2014. And my most recent book came out just before the world went crazy, around Christmas in 2019, and that's The Human Edge. And the subtitle of that kind of gives the plot away. That's how curiosity and creativity are your superpowers in the digital economy.
Now, it's something that we hear about quite a lot, how important curiosity and creativity are in today's businesses. But what's your perspective on why that is?
Well, I think I was saying this, by the way, before COVID-19 came along. I would argue that the pandemic has made these human capabilities even more important. But a couple of sort of mega trends, I think, have made creativity more important. That we have this rise of the machines, this AI, machine learning. So machines are coming for white collar jobs for the very first time. And so if you sort of take our lens a long way back, if you go to the first revolution, industrial revolution, steam took away our arms and legs from the production process. Well, machine learning is now taking basic cognitive skills. So that creates an interesting challenge for all of us. And obviously we've seen lots of press about people losing their jobs. And I think that will happen with very simple and repetitious jobs. But for the rest of us, Nick, I think in more complex roles, what we will see happening is AI cheese slicing away the simple and algorithmic parts of our jobs, which leaves a space for us to be more human. And the big advice I give to executives is don't continue to try to compete with machines in those simple areas, because you'll lose. AI is a lot better at that. What the big paradox is, where AI is weak, we are very strong. And that's in areas such as empathy, and passion, and curiosity, and human-to-human contact, and creativity, and all the things that we're going to talk about today.
I think there was a research study maybe 1 or 2 years back from Oxford Business, one of the Oxford University departments, which estimated which types of jobs are actually most at risk of being replaced by digital systems, by machine learning, and by artificial intelligence. What's your view on what types of jobs those are, and what types of jobs therefore are left over for the humans once the machine uprising happens?
Well, I think if you look at your own job, and you could replicate every kind of keystroke you do over a period of like 6 months, and in way train a very sort of like averagely talented intern to do that, well, probably your job will be automated by AI sometime in the next 5 years. So if you're into data inputting or coding for librarians, or very simple accountancy tasks, or very simple reviewing of documents, these are jobs that are going to be automated because algorithms can do that better. So some jobs will go, and we've seen that with autonomous driving, which is effectively an AI play. And what will be, and so I've given you some examples of that, but those aren't by any means all of the jobs that will go. But I think the good news is a lot of jobs will be left. And actually, I think the big story is humans that can work as kind of spontaneous creative beings alongside machines that can take away a lot of the boring stuff that we don't want to do anyway, leaving us to be more interested in maybe the next question. What comes next? That's what we're very good at, whereas AI is very good at looking at all the data that's out there that's already been.
And what is your view on what's coming next?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Nick.
What's your view on what is coming next?
Crikey, that's a big philosophical question, Nick. You might have to narrow that down a little bit. What's coming next in what area?
Okay, so let's narrow it down a little bit. Before the first robotic revolution, I think a lot of scholars were thinking, well, if robots are gonna replace all of this manual labor, and companies can be just as productive, then people are going to have a lot more free time, and it might end up with people working eventually only a couple of hours a week. Now, that hasn't happened. People are still working 40 hours a week, sometimes, in fact, a lot more. Do you think that this coming digital revolution is going to take away workload from people, or is it just going to be replaced with something else?
I think that's a great question. And I do think our relationship with machines on all sorts of different levels are one of the big stories of our era. And I think it's beholden on all of us to try and reflect and reconsider that. I think I like to think in time frames of about 10 years. I think any further than that, my brain kind of breaks down, and I'm not that interested because I think it's so difficult to forecast. And I think, just bear in mind, I'm not a technologist. I'm a person who's into leadership and human beings that's interested in the impact of technology. So, terms and conditions apply to my knowledge of this. But from what I've looked at for my book, we are not currently dealing with the Terminator. This isn't supercomputers. This isn't human level intelligence. Effectively, the AI that we see now, they do narrow while humans do general. That's why they call it narrow AI. So think smart washing machines more than the Terminator. So, I think what comes next is those things start to chip away at just things that you think they could do. I mean, we've seen those amazing experiments Google did with them as personal assistants, for example. And, even in bigger jobs like cancer diagnosticians, AI has been for some time the best cancer diagnostician on the planet. But I don't know about you, Nick. I might now want an AI to diagnose my illness, but I want to be cared for, and I want my options to be laid out by a human being. So I think what comes next for human beings is to really understand where we fit into this picture, into the changing world of work. And I do think that means there is a great divide opening up between human beings who sort of get this and are purpose-driven, are curious, have the ability to develop the habits of creativity, and therefore can be seen as a value in the workplace. And those on the other side of this sad divide, I think, will be seen as costs. And those people will be struggling not only to compete with AI, but fellow robotic humans, because the remote working revolution means we're all in competition from people from across the planet. You're in Germany, I'm in the UK. We could compete for the same job. So I think that's the important part, which is where do we fit into the workplace? But the other part I deal with in the book is the slight irony that to be creative human beings, we need to occasionally switch off and disconnect from the AI-enabled apps that call to us from the, I haven't got my mobile phone, my smartphone with me for the moment, but that accompany us everywhere. We need to find islands of tranquility in our lives in order to be able to think deep thoughts, to be able to have creative ideas, to be able to rest and play. And I think that is the other side of this coin, that machines and social media and always on work emails are actually causing more stress, more work, when they should be taking it away.
So you mentioned the human edge is something you can describe as capabilities that humans have that the machines don't have, and some would say will never have. I think you've summarized them as 4 C's. What are the human edge factors as you describe them, and what makes humans therefore more capable?
So the 4 C's stand for consciousness, curiosity, creativity, and collaboration. And the way I've structured it, at least in my book, is that each of those 4 C's has 2 dance steps. So there are 8 units, if you like. And the reason I call them dance steps, Nick, is I know you're very interested in the science of creativity. We know it's a very non-linear and messy process, actually. So dance steps you can learn individually, but then use them in any order. And that's the way I like to think of it. But just to go down one level below those 4 C's. So consciousness to me is broken down into finding meaning in your work and also finding focus, which I was just referring to. Curiosity is the ability to ask great questions of the world around you, which is the first step to a lot of innovation, and also to learn very, very rapidly, which I think we're going to be needing to do as economic units in this century. Creativity, I break down into all the habits that you can do to start having ideas and then build up a portfolio of ideas. Because we do know creative superstars don't actually generally have better ideas, they just have more of them. They listen out for more of them. And then the final part, collaboration, I take a particular view of collaboration, which is a very big subject, of course. But I look at how do you build a network of fellow human beings in order to collaborate with and also to test your ideas. And also how do you experiment with other people in order to test your ideas in the real world. So that's the whole kind of picture. And I sort of drill down in each of those to try and give people practical science-based tips and techniques in order to make that part of their lives.
Now, you mentioned something in your last point, which is humans might be in competition with not just each other, but with machines if they themselves are robotic and doing robotic tasks. These 4 C's you mentioned, collaboration, consciousness, creativity, and curiosity. Do you think every human has them? And some might feel that they have less of them than others. Are those people more at risk of being replaced? And can they improve these capabilities to make sure they're still relevant in the future?
Yeah, well, I'll take the last part of your question first. I think, yes, I wouldn't have written the book unless I thought there was hope that we can all consciously foster these things. I think actually it's a really interesting question. I think it falls into 2 parts. I think in terms of collaboration and consciousness, I think those things you need to find and build. So if consciousness is made up, there are simple habits you can do during the day to try and switch off and try and find more focus, and also to try to discover meaning, which I think is a very rich area. Curiosity and creativity, of course, we're born with those things. And if you look at all the studies of what happens to your curiosity and your creativity as you go from the age of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and into school and into the workplace, the depressing conclusion of many studies that have been rerun and re-established over time since the 60s is that our curiosity and creativity markedly declines as we go out into the real world. But I always think that's quite depressing that, if you test a 5-year-old, they're far more curious and creative than the average 25-year-old. But I like to think of it in a more optimistic way, Nick. I think the conclusion of all the science I've read on that is the reason this reduces in our lives is uncreative thinking behaviors and patterns are learned. They're learned from our environment. So anything that can be learned can be unlearned. And that is what my book is all about, is to give people simple ways to re-access and reignite, if you like, their curiosity and their creativity.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. There's a lot of research which suggests that creative performance is more a factor of nurture than of nature. So everyone's got a baseline genetic level creativity that they're born with, but their actual performance is much more based on their upbringing, their surroundings, their experiences, and their routines. And those things are things that can be changed. So even if you don't feel that you're reaching your creative potential right now, science says you can improve it, and you can sort of reach another level.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that's one of the really key inspiring parts that really drives me and drives my work. And obviously we're framing this in terms of, I know your audience is filled with people who are into innovation, which is linked to revenue and profits and executives. And I think that's true. I think creativity has a very commercial edge to it. But, I would say, I think just being curious and creative leads to a richer and a happier and more, possibly happier, with a caveat on that. It depends on how much you pursue your goals, but certainly a richer and more interesting life. And that's what I wish for everybody, really.
So we're coming up to the end of the interview. I've just got a parting question for you. There have been advances in artificial intelligence that are starting to develop actual apparent creative capabilities themselves as well now, whether or not it's creating visual art, creating music, or in some cases, the latest text-based AI, I think it's called GPT-3, is able to start writing journalism articles, completing sentences, and sometimes even pretending to be a person from another century, and people can have a conversation with them. Is there not also a risk that AI and machine learning are going to become creative themselves and take that advantage away from people?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, a very philosophical one to end on. We could talk for another couple of hours about it. And of course, when I was looking at the book, I did investigate that. It's not just what you were saying. Actually, a good friend of mine runs a company that produces AI written journalism. There's a lot of it about. We'll have all read it, actually. And AI can write jokes and do all sorts of different things. The bottom line is we still have an enormous advantage in these areas. If you ever look and tell each other these AI written jokes, they are truly terrible. They mostly are unintentional.
Then again, so are some of the ones that I come up with. So maybe I'm not that different.
I'm sure that's very true, but maybe you've got a bit more potential in you than the AI. So absolutely, I do think AI will play a role in creativity, as it already does if you use it right, in curiosity. We all carry around more information on our smartphone that the average US president had 25 years ago. We have access to the world's knowledge, not that all of us are using it in that way. So it plays a role in curiosity. It will be a partner in creativity by offering us creative options in design and all sorts of different things. However, I think during our lifetimes, I still believe these things we're talking about, feelings, empathy, which underpin creativity and curiosity, these human touches, this human edge, we're still got a massive lead in this area. And even if AI improves markedly over the next 10, 20, 30 years, there'll still be a space for the human being.
Absolutely. Lovely, positive note to end on. Greg, it's been wonderful speaking with you. If people want to find out more about you and your work, what's the best place they can go to find out more?
Well, they can come to my website, which is gregorme, all one word, .org.org. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, and I'm at Greg Orme on LinkedIn and on Twitter, which I think I'm at Gregory Orme on Twitter, because that was the only one that was left. I also I'm a Forbes contributor, and they can find my page there on Forbes as well.
Perfect. I'll make sure to get all of those links down in the description below. Greg, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Nick, thanks for having me on the show. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders, and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they are backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.